Hallows Eve, but you've got Day of the Dead, which is the 2nd of November, which is very close. It's only a few days apart, so I'm just thinking there's a completely different culture. Yeah. And probably for a long time the two didn't cross paths, and yet within a few days of each other they're celebrating something very similar.
So how did you celebrate your...
Oh, our Halloween was lots of fun when we were kids, but I never bobbed for apples. I'm like, no, that is not happening.
Did you dress up?
Absolutely.
Barbie doll.
No, not quite.
With her throat slit.
I remember being a bunch of grapes once with purple balloons. That was interesting.
I think I went as a penguin.
Oh,
but I had these long flippers which were longer than my own, so I couldn't hold anything. And they had this beak out the front. And I couldn't
get the apples.
People would put lollies in, but they would roll down and sit on my chin. And I couldn't get to them.
So they thought we were being
It was
funny.
very unhappy.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's our first third of our show, looking into the importance of Halloween. So
yes,
take
happy
a break.
Halloween, everyone! Woo!
And we'll be back with you shortly.
Our second segment is called Spirits Listening to Spirits. This is where we answer your questions that you either email to us or message on Facebook. And in the next coming weeks, we might even have a special guest. Today's question is from Josh from Perth, and he asks, do our loved ones who have passed away come back to visit us? Oh. What do you think about that, Ronnie?
Wow. Interesting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of people who don't imagine that that's actually possible. Some people who don't actually want to know about it. If you're likely to see anything they don't want to know. Yeah. I suppose that's, you've got to respect that. I'm lucky from the point of view that obviously I do actually see the person that's passed over. They will visualise themselves to me. They'll quite often give me a name, or they might sort of give me an action or something that they did when they were living, a job or something that they particularly liked doing.
Yep. Oops, that's me. Do they, when you see them, do they look like the age that they passed, or do they take on a persona of something else?
No, a long time ago, I used to be a musician, and I played a lot of Irish music.
You still do?
Yes, but I was studying at the time, and then I was actually a semi-professional. So we were playing in a band. We kept getting approached by this guy who owned a pub in Devon, not far from where we were playing, and he asked us to come to play in the pub, and the pub itself was over 200 years old. So I kind of assumed that there might be something that was near that kind
hanging
of...
about.
Yeah. yeah. Like the old sheet or something, visible in the air. But it was bad luck for me that night because I was the driver and there was a free bar and we all turned up and he showed us around and told us, this is where he wanted us to come and play. And the landlady just happened to speak to the fiddle player who mentioned, how old the pub was and, I bet you've seen something. So she said, well, in actual fact, we have. A couple of times we've had this sort of feeling and a bit of a sighting in the corner of our eye and we don't know what it is. We're all a bit scared and we know it's coming from the cellar. So he said, well, why didn't you ask Ronnie? Ronnie will go down there and have a look, I'm sure, because I've obviously got this kind of gypsy background.
Send Ronnie down the cellar.
Yeah, Ronnie.
I don't think that's a good idea at all.
And you should have seen this. Cellar.
Yeah, well, luckily for me, or unluckily, I wasn't drinking because I was driving. Otherwise, I probably would never have come back up.
Was it a wine cellar?
There's nothing in there.
Yeah, I can guarantee the spirits are fine. So I go down there like a good girl, not scared at all. You're not pooing my pants. And I thought, oh well, if it's going to come out, it will. And this young guy came out and dressed all in leather gear. And he had a helmet under his arm, and he was a young biker. He was probably late 20s, early 30s, and we had this conversation. And he told me that this was the place that he used to do. Him and his mates used to do up there. Bikes. They used to tea-cut, polish, they'd take the engine apart, they'd listen to music, they'd smoke some various substances, and basically chill out and enjoy themselves. And he was very apologetic, really, that he'd actually upset anybody or unnerved them or frightened them. So that was the message, but that was his place. And this actual made a programme on ghost hunters in
the UK. That was back in the early 90s.
That's right. What was the channel?
Was it Channel 4?
Discovery Channel.
Oh, Discovery.
Yeah, there was a series of them. So a medium was employed to come down from London to see if they could actually pick up the same thing. And luckily for me, he did. He described exactly the same person. But the difference with me and him is I didn't feel that he was in any way unhappy about where he was.
He wasn't distressed.
No. But the other medium said that he needed to go back. But the landlady from the pub actually researched the story in the library. She wanted to see if there was any real connection by what I'd said.
As you would do, yeah.
Not that I took it personally. Oh, you're a fake, so I'm going to the library to find out. And then maybe we won't employ you to play music. But she... Luckily, yes, there was a small story about this particular pub, which I won't name, but he was the son of the owners, and he'd had an argument with the girlfriend, taken off on the bike. There was a massive storm, and one of the telegraph poles had fallen down, and of course there was a wire that had, across the road, and as he went past, it decapitated him. So that's probably why he was carrying the helmet under his arm. Luckily, there was no head in it; it was on the top of his shoulders.
So he's moved on to Sleepy Hollow, I think.
He wasn't using Head and Shoulders. The shampoo.
Oh dear!
Oh, that's a dad joke. So yeah, for me, there is life after death. They come back. Yep. But over to you. I think you've got a couple of good stories about this as well, haven't you, Claudia?
Yeah. Well, I think sort of the main one is I lost my mum in 2005. Before she was preparing to go because she had cancer, so she knew she was getting ready to transition, as we like to call it. We had quite a few conversations before that occurred, and I said to her, because my mother was a very, very Christian woman. She belonged to the Salvation Army, so she had sort of a set story that she had to follow, whereas with me being very spiritual, I was open to everything. So we kind of went on different paths in that regards. But when it was coming time to her to leave, I said to her, Mom, just to sort of validate that you've made it safely, I said, I want you to send me some gifts. I want you to send me white feathers, but in extraordinary circumstances, not just one lying on the ground. It has to appear strangely. And pennies, because now we don't have pennies here. But this in Canada, the pennies were being phased out at this stage. So I thought something that will be rare, that will turn up in odd occurrences. So anyway, the time came. She did transition. The day of the funeral.
What do you mean by transition? Because some people wouldn't understand that.
It was crossed over, passed away.
Okay.
Died, yeah.
She didn't change sex, you mean, transition.
Well, maybe she'll come back as a man. I don't know. That's another episode. Anyway, so the day of the funeral, my brother, my father, and myself were walking down the steps of my father's house, and lo and behold, there's a penny right in the middle of the first step.
Wow.
So my brother finds it. He picks it up and goes, and gives it to me. Get in the car. My brother jumps into the back seat. Another penny. He goes, the other one. Gives it to me. We get to the church for the funeral. Walking up to the chairs that are lined up in the front for the family. I've got my father on my arm, and as I'm walking up, all of a sudden, what's sitting right in the middle of the seat where he's about to sit? Another penny. Wow. And it just went on and on and on. We just kept finding these pennies everywhere.
Is the So your mother was spending a penny.
She was.
You stole my life.
One of her favorite songs was "Pennies from Heaven."
Uh-huh.
So "Pennies from Heaven" also, I have it on my Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
I've got thousands of songs on my Spotify, but just every now and then when I'm feeling a certain way, because you can just put it on random shuffle, and I'll be driving along the car and I'll have a little conversation with Mum, and all of a sudden out of the blue, "Pennies from Heaven" starts to play on my Spotify. And just, "Hi, Mom." It's just her letting me know she's around.
How should people feel if they have that sense? Should they? The first thing I would do is distrust it is my fallback position.
Yeah.
I think because it occurs quite often at a young age, it goes the other way. You just think everyone has this, and then you learn, as you did, that you find your gift is actually extraordinary, and not everybody has it. So.
Everybody wants some sort of consolidation. That when the Spirit has come to give you a message, everyone wants some sort of validation that it is actually them, and which I think is perfectly natural and normal. Why wouldn't you? You don't know the person who's going to give you this message.
Well, I have a little story too.
Okay,
good.
We're listening.
When my father passed, the whole family, we got the information, and we thought we'll go down to the beach box down here and wish him well with a glass of wine. So we went, the 3 children, we all went down, and it was a blowing night. It wasn't cold, but it was a blowy night.
You mean blustery?
Blustery.
A Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
A Winnie the Pooh day, blustery.
And the waves were popping and things. Anyway, there was no moon or anything. It was a completely dark night. All you could just see is the horizon. So we stood there, happily minding our business and getting ourselves ready. And quite suddenly, the sky in front... I was standing closest to the water, having a little moment. The sky opened, and the moon light came through the clouds, and it formed a bird. Now, with my father's on his ring is a kestrel.
Oh,
it's his totem.
Beautiful.
And this bird appeared.
Yeah.
And it was full arms stretched out, wings stretched out, and then we just, because my family was behind me, and then it just
Disappeared.
closed. The hole closed in the clouds, disappeared.
Wow.
And I turned around and went, did anyone see that?
I said you would.
And they all did. And they all did. And they said, wow. They said, that's... And that, we think... No, our take on it is that it was Dad's totem that came and visited.
Yep.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh at that. It's just that the listeners wouldn't have seen it, but Brodie was pretending to turn round as he said the story to give it a bit more credibility, but the stupid idiot doesn't realise you lot can't see. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
That is absolutely beautiful.
But it was. And the other extraordinary thing, too, was that on the day of the day that I was leaving, he'd had a stroke and I was in England. And the day that I was leaving and I was just about to go and see him for the last time, a kestrel came and landed on his balcony.
Wow.
And it just sat there, not looking at us, looking away.
See, and there's the thing with the birds again.
Yeah, we were
well.
talking about that yesterday, weren't we?
Well, the last episode we were.
Yeah, the last episode, you're quite right. Yes.
Yeah.
Can I add, have we got time to add one more little story?
Of course, yeah.
Sure. I'm sure my friend won't mind, but I'm not going to name her. Actually, last week, I was actually doing some artwork, and it was all to do with a qualification that I'm doing in counselling. And I'm doing creative therapies where it's all about using art, creativity, sound, play, to enable people to communicate. And like the Carl Jung, where we got our Numinous Factor idea from about the spirituality coming through, it allows you to be in that kind of meditative state. So I'm in that meditated state, and this meditative, I should say, and in comes this little lady, and she keeps tapping me on the shoulder. Well, don't forget that I can see them like they're here, She kept saying, live. All I could hear was her saying, live. And I'm thinking to myself, is she talking about living? And then I realised that she was telling me her name. And